original. Yeah, this is real original. Real original. Sign, seal, real original.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening to the Real Original podcast with me, Michael Sutton. Today's guest, I'm so excited for you guys. Christina Rice, also known as Christina the Channel. She is a badass businesswoman and entrepreneur. She's a channel. She is very connected spiritually and has these gifts that I don't even fully understand. And even just in this talk, we get into it more. And I learned so much about spirituality and the world and the bubble that she's in. And I found it so fascinating of how she's able to take her intuition and use that in business and in life, and had also used it to help with her chronic health issues. This is a really cool episode. I'm excited for you guys. And without further ado, here we go.
I am ready. I'm curious about your book.
So
You're
curious about this book? No. I would give everyone who comes on a book.
Well,
this book is the book I selected for you. Because
you just gave me a book.
But I was on your podcast.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
This book I got for you because last night we were talking and you said you're more into novels and stuff like that than you are into like business development and like books like that. So
not
this
that
is
I'm
a
not.
novel.
I just tend to read novels more.
Have you heard of this book?
I have not, but it looks like something I would
I think you're going to like it.
like. Where did you get this?
Amazon.
Really?
Yeah. Where did
Okay.
you think I got it?
It looks like a bookstore book.
I do try to go to bookstores. I'm a bookstore guy. Like I
Yeah.
like to go to the Book Catapult and Verbatim and actually buy books from like a local retailer.
Yeah.
But sometimes
I love it. Well, I asked
you're gonna love
because
this.
There's something about, for me, like I have the urge to smell this, like the smell of old pages and like
Sensual.
library books. You know, it's like I love that, and I feel like I asked that because I feel like since Amazon, all the books are very sterile and they just individually print, like it's on-demand printing most of it. And so whenever I see books like this is like old school, like they bought in bulk.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I think if I remember correctly, like, because I'm like weird about stuff, like I bought Daniel Quinn, the author, I bought his series, and I think it's like 3 books that go with this one. And I wanted them all to be like the old version. So like they like match.
Yeah.
Like I don't like having like
Oh,
the old,
I get it.
You know what I mean?
I
So
get
I'm kind of like weird OCD like that.
I
but
love it.
You're going to love this book.
Why? What's
I just want you
it
to
about?
read it. It's about, I'll just tell you the intro. It's about a kid who's looking for something and he meets a talking gorilla.
Okay.
And the gorilla has a perspective on humanity.
okay?
And it's one of those books. It's a novel, but it makes you think.
Great. Can't wait.
I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure to
I'm
be with
excited.
you. I'm excited too. So the first thing, like when I look at your like Instagram profile, it says no BS
Yeah.
intuitive.
Yeah.
What does BS mean? No, I'm kidding. But what is it? What is a new no BS intuitive? Like what does that mean?
You know, I should probably update that. I put that on there a long time ago, like back in my business coaching days when you're a coach, and I don't think I would do this anymore, but you set your name up to be like what you do, you know?
Yeah.
So when people, that's basically the search function in Instagram. So I just really haven't updated it, but it's just, for me being in the spirituality space, I think a lot of people assume that I'm going to have a certain type of personality, and I don't. And so something that's important for me with my audience and with everything I do is it has to be very clear of like what you're getting into, so to speak. Like what I mean by that is the way I communicate is very direct and very blunt. And I find a lot of people who do what I do are much more like softer, and they're, I don't know, like airier and gentler, and I'm not necessarily
coming from you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? And if that's authentic for you, that's beautiful, right? That's just not what's authentic for me and how I communicate. So I know for some people, they think, oh, I'm going to a psychic or I'm going to an energy healer. And it's not that I can't be soft and gentle, but I am very like direct, you know? And even with the clients I take, I work with people who are more, they don't have to be an entrepreneur, but it's that kind of mindset. It's, this is what I want to create. This is what I want to make happen. Like, how do I make it happen? You know? So, for me, with everything marketing wise, I try and it can be very subtle, whether it's through our branding and colors or like things like that, like no BS intuitive. It just something to give kind of an edge so people understand, or they're warmed up to, rather, the way that I communicate. You know, it's like, it's very direct.
Yeah. I've noticed.
Bet.
But I like it. I like it. It works for me.
Yeah.
I'm not a subtle guy.
Yeah.
And like, you know,
Yeah.
it works. So I really appreciate that about you.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. When intuitive, right? And you mentioned words like or things like you're in the spiritual space, intuitive, psychic. Like for anyone listening, like what does it mean to like an intuitive and what does it really mean to be a psychic?
That's a good question. It's funny for me because I straddle all of these different bubbles, and when you go into that whole, I guess my bubble of the spirituality space, where I have so many friends who are also intuitives and energy healers and Akashic Records readers, and like you're in your own whole world. The same way in entrepreneurship, you're in your own whole world. And before I was in the nutrition space, and I'm in that like health and wellness bubble, right? And you don't realize there are all these other bubbles where everything that's normal for you is not normal for everybody else. And so for me, I feel like I'm constantly kind of like dipping into these different bubbles and trying to explain to people the other bubbles, like other things exist. And when I talk about, you know, being a psychic or an intuitive, I guess for most of your audience, I'm assuming like is not as familiar with.
So I don't know who my audience is
Okay.
for. It might just be, you know, my mom and hi mom. No, and,
the way that
and a couple people.
I ask that just because the way that I explain all of it, I try and, you know, understand who I'm communicating with. So they can hear what I'm saying.
I'm guessing that like
Yeah.
more people would come from your audience because you're here, but also if they're coming from my audience, I'm guessing that because even like when we've talked, like I was taught about mindset and manifestation, but my first experience dealing with you, I'm like, what do you mean you're a psychic? What does that mean? Or like, what do you mean you energy healer? And it wasn't until I went into your energy room and I felt like I couldn't stop smiling. I was like, oh, maybe there is something here to it.
So I'll start with the word psychic. There are a lot of people who do what I do that don't like that word. I don't mind it at all. I use it because I think I don't really believe in getting too caught up in words, but that's a whole other thing. So I think a lot of people, when they think of a psychic, they think like, oh, I'm going to see your future. Or some people think I'm like a mind reader or something like that. That's not exactly what it is. The way that I define a psychic, it's a much broader term, and there are kind of different specialties in that. There are some people who are very precognitive and like do see future timelines more than other things. For me, I'm more of like an energy reader, so to speak. So I'm more looking at like the energy of a soul and different potential timelines. And from there, you can also look at, you know, past history. And it's sort of like what's going on now, what's contributing to what's going on now energetically. The thing is, we have free will choice. And so our future can change all the time, right? Like we create our future based on our choices. So when I'm talking about being psychic, for me, that's a broad term that's referring to I am connected to the non-physical realms. I can see what's in the non-physical, and not everybody has activated that ability. So I believe everybody has psychic senses, and everybody can turn those on and tap into those. I think most people have those turned on. They just don't realize they're turned on. And I think like everything, I mean, think about being an English teacher, right? There's a lot of us who speak the English language, but there are some people that have this natural ability with the English with the English language, or, you know, whether you're an English teacher or a writer or a novelist, right? There are some people where that's really their thing, language. And it's sort of like that with psychic senses. Does that make sense? Where I believe everybody has them, but there are some people where that's just really our thing, right?
Yeah, well, it's like, I mean, I love to play tennis, right? But I'm not going to Wimbledon anytime soon.
Totally.
Right.
And that's exactly, you know, what it is. And so for me, that's important because I do want more and more people to recognize their psychic senses that they already have and like utilize those in their life, because that is what has transformed every part of my life and allowed me to create the life I have. It's healed my body. It has helped me make a lot of money. It has helped me make major impact on the world. It helps me have deep relationships, you know? So I just think for most of the things people struggle with, if I can help them understand their own intuitive gifts, it makes their life a lot easier. And for me, it's all about how do we just get our own answers instead of being dependent on other people. So that's important for me foundationally. But yeah, within that psychic world, there's all different ways that people can be psychics, so to speak. So I do that for my job. I tap into the non-physical realm. I can speak to spirits. I see spirits. In hologram form outside of me. I can see energy fields around me, but like that since I was a kid. So there's sort of like all of these different layers to reality that I visually see with my eyes that other people aren't seeing. So that's one way my intuitive gifts come forward, right? So that's one version of what we call clairvoyance, clear seeing. That's also in your mind's eye. So a lot of people don't realize, you know, if someone's talking and you have a visual pop into your head, that's clairvoyant information. Some people are more visually oriented like that. Other people are more clairaudient, which is hearing. And so sometimes that sounds like outside of you, but more often than not, it sounds like the voice in your head, or it might sound like a different voice in your head. And so, you know, I have all of those gifts turned on. Most people have all of them, but a lot of people will lean further in one direction, you know, than the other. And then there's
They have a preference.
The knowing. Yeah. There's like the inner knowing. I just know. I'm claircognizant. That's clear knowing or clairsentience. I feel with my body. There are a lot of people who have physical symptoms that they have connected to health issues, myself included. And I'm not saying that those health issues aren't real. They are, but there's also other things going on at the same time. And for me, it took me a long time to realize that so much of my chronic illness was connected to my psychic abilities, my psychic gifts. And when you are a feeler and you feel in your physical body and you are taking everything on as this is my own, instead of recognizing I'm picking up energy from other people, and that's intuitive information. If you don't know how to work with that, you can start to identify with that sickness and kind of create it more and have it stick in your body. And so that was a big piece for me to understand with my own chronic illness journey as well. How much of what I was feeling in my body were my psychic abilities, my psychic senses through feeling, which can be emotions and physical sensations in the body. And so when I talk about being an energy healer, for people who aren't aware of that, there's lots of different energy healing modalities. You know, everything is energy. We know this.
Yeah.
And we have an energy body around us. We emit an electromagnetic field around us. This is all scientifically proven. And there are different ways to work with that energy body to kind of clear out any energetic blockages, right? So anything that's happening physiologically, for example, has an energetic root. And for me, when I think about my health journey, it was always, how do I find the root cause of this so I can finally heal, right?
So what was your health journey for anyone listening?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long story we could get into, but my health journey started when I was very young, if I include all of my mental health issues as well. I struggled with depression and anxiety from a really young age. I also had really bad digestive problems from a really young age, and that was very connected to my psychic gifts as well. But things really hit ahead when I was about 19, and I had a trigger event essentially, and I stopped digesting food. And I dropped about 50 pounds in the span of 3 months, and my body just kept dropping more and more weight. I wasn't no matter how much I ate, my body wasn't absorbing anything, and it got really scary. And my organs started shutting down, and it was intense. And so I was seeing all kinds of doctors and specialists, and dropped out of school, and I thought I was going to die. Like, they told me I was going to die.
It's frightening.
It was very scary. I felt completely out of control because it was like no matter what I did, no matter how much food I ate, like the scale would go down every single day. I just felt myself withering away. And that is so scary. Like, you know, to be that young, and I'm in college, I'm at UCLA, and I'm looking at all my friends just running around, you know, having fun partying. And here I am like fighting for my life. And that was it was emotional in so many ways. And there was all kinds of rumors being spread about me. I lost most people in my life at that time. It impacted my relationships really deeply. And And it made me kind of question the way that I had been living up until that point, to be honest, and brought me back to myself and what do I really want. And that was the thing that forced me into the mindset of, if I die next week, what do I want to do this week?
What were you living for before you got sick? Like, what did your life really look like? Because you said it changed your perspective. So like, what were you kind of like before you got sick?
I was very desperate for external validation. And
oh yeah, I know that guy.
yeah, I think like most people.
I think a lot of us do, yeah.
Most people. And I think I was always in this pursuit of perfection. Like I
could see that.
Classic type A perfectionist, straight A student, president of every club, like type A overachiever, captain of the team. Like I was that type, and I think a lot of that, there are a few reasons I was like that. And one being I just always felt like the misfit. I always felt different.
How old were you when you first felt different?
2.
Yeah.
2 years old, and I am different. I was different. I am different. And I always felt like there was this gap between me and other people. Like I was perceiving a lot of things other people weren't. I felt like there was always this gap in communication. Like I could understand other people, but they couldn't understand me. And I just felt really alone and isolated. And yeah, I felt different for a lot of reasons. Felt like the way that I thought was different. The way that I saw the world was different. I was, from a very young age, I knew when everybody was lying, and I would call it out. And I'm seeing fields around me.
It's the no BS in you.
It's all of it, So, and especially when I was little, like my gifts were so on and so out of control. Like I didn't know how to control them, and that was very scary for me. It's too much stimulation. It was way too much stimulation with all of the spirits I was seeing and all the fields I was seeing and all the input I was getting. It was a lot. And, you're really young. You don't really have the tools to deal with that. Even as an adult, if things get turned all the way on, like that's a lot to deal with. And like, thankfully now I am very kind of controlled with how I tap into the non-physical. But yeah, I always felt different, and I wanted to be seen, and I wanted people to understand me, and yeah, it was just external validation. I thought that if I was perfect, people would love me.
Oh, that's a classic one.
The classic, yeah.
That's a classic.
A tale as old as time.
You're perfect to me, Christina.
Thank you.
So you're young, you're overachieving, you're doing this, and you went to, where'd you go to school? Where were you at when you were
UCLA.
So you're at UCLA, which is a great school. And you have this history of being the overachiever, and all of a sudden, like, wham, you get sick.
Yeah.
And you're really sick, you're not digesting food, and you're faced with a choice. It sounds like essentially to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because no one knows what's wrong. So, like, what did you do? How that changed your perspective, and, like, where did that move you to?
I think up until that point, I really so desperately... teenage me, I just wanted someone to fight for me, if that makes sense. Like I wanted somebody to be like, I care so much about you, I'm going to help you through this. And I feel like I was waiting around for a savior. And it was through that experience I realized no one's going to save me. And the first part of that, I was desperate for somebody to come save me. And when I realized no one's going to come save me, I have to save myself, everything changed. And I hit it hard, I just put my head down and I researched. And I read a lot of PubMed, and I started studying lots of different experimental treatments and doctors, and I started reading a lot of books, and I changed my lifestyle, and I just started doing it instead of kind of waiting for what is my doctor going to tell me,
Yeah.
And it was such a cluster. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast or no? I don't know.
Fuck yeah.
Okay. It was such a clusterfuck, the way that I think a lot of people I know a lot of people in my audience have had a similar experience, when you're in the medical system and you are a complicated case and you're working with a lot of different specialists at the same time, just that gap in care. And I was put on contraindicating medications. Things got a lot worse because there wasn't communication between the team, and that's really scary. You're putting your life in people's hands, and they're not communicating, or maybe they're being lazy, or they're overlooking it, or they're moving too fast, and that can have real life consequences. And so I experienced that many times. And so I kind of just decided I'm going to do this myself. And that's what led me to the whole world of holistic health, using nutrition, diet, lifestyle to heal. And I just geeked out over it, and I started building my own protocols, and I started tweaking my own diet, and things started turning around. And I got to a place myself where I was like stable enough. Like I literally had to gain a certain amount of weight to go back to school. And so in order to gain a certain amount of weight, I had to like basically heal my body to the point where I could absorb food and like, you know what I mean? And so I got to that point, and thankfully by that point, and through all my research, I had started meeting very different types of people, and I made some amazing connections, and I got introduced to an incredible doctor, who then from that stabilized place, he like really helped me, and then kind of got me to like, optimize and all of that. And it was kind of
optimize.
I got to a place where I was like stabilized, like I wasn't on my deathbed myself, but then it was by the time I got to him, it's like what's actually going on. And so he's the one doing all the real testing, and it's like all these different gut infections and hypothyroid and candida and mold and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not a doctor, I can't do all those tests on myself, so I was just doing what I could to like stabilize, and that got me to a good place where I could live normally, I could go back to school. And then he actually was able to look at everything and like help me from there.
So is this like a functional medicine doctor?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he is actually, after that, like I got to a place where it wasn't life threatening, but over the years, my health did go like up and down. And that was hard and that was scary, but.
Do you mean like you would get better and then you'd regress?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
And so there was a long journey of like what's actually going on. And it took me a long time to eventually get to what was going on, which was Lyme disease, and mold. Like those were the two big things underlying. And it took me, maybe like 7 years to get to those diagnoses, just like years and years of testing and figuring things out and getting better in one direction, then regressing. But it was during that period of, I'd get better and then regress. That same functional medicine doctor had told me to visit this psychic in LA. He had been sending a lot of his patients to her and just spoke very highly of her. And I had never seen a psychic before.
Why did you go?
Because...
Like, were you hesitant to go? Like, if the doctor told me to see a psychic, I might be hesitant. But if I tried everything else, I might think...
No, I wasn't hesitant at all. I'm really open-minded. Like, I've always been like that. Like, I will literally try anything. I've tried so many things, like, in my life and with my health. I'm open to whatever. So I wasn't hesitant at all. And also, like, living in LA and the different internships I had and jobs I had up until that point, like I was very steeped in the health and wellness space, which has so much crossover with like the spirituality space. So I'm, around people who are doing Kundalini yoga, going to their psychic every week, like doing energy healing. And I hadn't yet done any of that, but I was around it. And it was kind of like normal for me, for people around me to be doing. So I didn't really hesitate. I was like new things. And with my health journey, to your point, like I'll do anything. I would do anything. Nothing's too crazy for me to try.
So if anyone was listening and they have like a health issue that they can't seem to get figured out, and they're doing like diet, exercise, all the things that they're supposed to do, taking whatever their doctor's giving them, it sounds like for you, one of the things that really helped was leaning in and going into the energy space and working there.
100%.
So what happened at the psychic?
She, I didn't know what to expect. And I think what's interesting is, I lucked out that was my first psychic experience, because there are so many people that are like, get a psychic reading for $5,
with the hand on the side.
It's like, it's not that kind of thing, and it's like a very legit, I walk in and basically what happened was it was 90 minutes and she just asked me, what do you want to tap into? And I said, I'm curious about my business, like my career. I'm curious about my health, and I'm curious about my love life. That's what I said. And she just talked for 90 minutes and predicted. She was very precognitive, and every single thing she said came true.
That's trippy.
Yeah. But one of the things she said, it was one of those things where, I'm taking everything in. I'm like, well, I guess I see what happens, because it was so forward focused. So one of the things she said is, I remember she started crying and she was like, "You're going to do what I do." I was like, "No, I'm not." I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Yeah, you're going to do what I do." I'm like, "No, I'm not at all. I don't have that." And she was like, "Yeah, you are." And it's just funny because, here I am. And after that, it reactivated a lot of my abilities, because what had happened was I was so turned on as a kid, and I turned a lot of it off. I suppressed a lot of it, which was a big reason why I had so many health issues, And I had a visitation that night from an angel, and I hadn't had a physical visitation like that since I was a child. And the angel said, "You need to become an energy healer." And when you have a visitation, like, you listen, so.
Yeah, I've never had one, but if I had one, I'm
like,
sure I would,
imagine,
right?
Yeah. You're like, okay,
yeah.
So I buy a book. I was like, I don't know where to start. So I just bought some book on energy healing, and coincidentally, the next day, my friend had referred me to a massage therapist, and she comes to her place. And so she came to my place and she saw my energy healing book, and she asked me, "Oh, do you do energy healing?" I go, "No, but I want to learn. I want to get trained." And she goes, "Oh, like I train energy healers." And I go, "Great. Can you train me?" She's like, "Yeah." So I became her student, and she mentored me for about a year, and all my, everything just kind of reactivated, turned on. And I realized, it was so easy for me. It was natural for me. And that sort of set off the cascade of my energy healing business and that side of what I was doing. And the more I leaned in that direction, long story short, when I started using energy work to heal my body is really when it cleared. So, and it was really, by the time I got the Lyme diagnosis, I was looking at all of the treatment options, and I have a lot of friends who have.
That's chronic, isn't it?
Depends who you ask.
Yeah.
So I don't identify with having Lyme disease anymore. I had all my labs, all my markers, and now you look at my labs, I look like I'm normal. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's great.
But I was looking at all of that, and you have to understand, it had been close to a decade of supplements and protocols and restrictive diets and I was exhausted. You're exhausted. Imagine, I was on a super strict diet for close to a decade. And I'm taking 50 pills a day, and
wow.
every day, your health is your job at that point. I'm going to all these different treatments. I've been doing ozone, all this stuff. And by the time I got that diagnosis, I was so tired, and I was like, I literally can't do this. So the main things I did for Lyme, I took one supplement, AHCC, which if anybody has any immune system related issues, I recommend looking into. It's a functional mushroom. And there are incredible clinical trials on this. It's really incredible research. And that was really, my friend's an educator for it, and she brought me the Lyme disease study, and every single person who took HCC healed. And so, I'm not going to lose anything. So I replaced everything with AHCC, and then I did energy healing.
Wow. So what strikes me so much about just what you went through is just how after a whole decade of just supplements, pills, doctors of all this complex, just working your life around your illness, it came down to one supplement and energy healing to finally well,
it was always meant to. And I think I was getting frustrated because I thought, just how many times am I going to do a different version of the same thing? And, along that journey.
You know what they call that?
Insanity.
Yeah.
I know. And along that journey, I had worked with many different practitioners and different FMDs, different nutritionists, all different types of people, different experts. And I would always say, I'm and new tests. And I would say, I just feel like I'm doing the same thing that I did before. And they would say, but you haven't done this with me, or we haven't done these exact supplements before. But I just felt like cannot be it, you know? And for me now, with what I do, like as a psychic, as an intuitive, as an energy healer, I just have such a different perspective on everything. And I wish I had started with the energy work approach, because what I know is that if you have a purpose or a mission and you are not in alignment with it, or even not even just your purpose or your mission, this can be like you're in a relationship that's out of alignment, for example, that can make your body sick. Your body is talking to you all the time. And if your body is trying to get your attention, it speaks in body language, right? Which is, I have a symptom. Something is off. This isn't correct. And so that's how your body is saying, you got to make a change. And for me, it was always, wake up, Christina. Like, this isn't your path. Move to this path. And when I started doing, you know, my intuitive work and energy healing, it was made very clear to me, like the message was, this is your contract. The more you channel, the more your body will heal. And that has been true. And, you know, I remember reading this quote. I'm not a shaman. I haven't studied shamanism, but I remember reading this quote from a shaman who, it was like this person's blog or something. And I don't know how I stumbled across this on the internet, but it was like divinely guided. And this person, he said, you know, I learned that if shamanism is in your blood and you don't use your magic, it will kill you. And it, like, I had just full body chills when I read that. And I really believe that to be true for like all of us. Like, if we have a mission or a magic within us and we don't use it, like, our body will rebel as a way to get our attention, to say, hey, there's something else to look at, go in a different direction. And the more I started kind of looking at things from this energetic approach, I realized that anytime like symptoms would come up with my body, I would look at my life and think, what has my intuition been telling me? And when I would make a life change in alignment with it, those symptoms would go away.
Wow.
And when we look at like the energetics of the body or medical intuition, every part of the body is connected to an energetic, an emotion, a part of our lives. And as I've explored that side of things, like, suddenly it all makes sense. And so again, it's not that there aren't very real physiological things going on. It's an and to me, right? And it's like, what is the energetic root? Like, for me, what allowed that mold to be in my body? What allowed that Lyme to live in my body? What allowed all that SIBO and fungal overgrowth in my gut? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What was setting my terrain up for that? And so when I think about health and wellness, like wellness, my body wants to be in alignment with its mission and in alignment with its truth, with joy, with all of that. So I do feel that like purpose, mission, alignment with your truth, with your highest path, is so connected to what's going on with the body. And that's one of my favorite things to do. It's like, let's look at the energetic root of whatever your symptoms are, whatever your illness is. And I know, you know, for me now, I train energy healers, and that's something we talk about a lot. I have so many practitioners, different health and wellness practitioners, doctors who now come and train with me for energy healing because they see this, right? There are some people where they get their supplement protocol, people change their diet, and, you know, it was really that simple. Like, maybe you picked up a parasite, you know, and we can clear it out. But there are other people where they realize something deeper is going on, you know, and so we have to get to the energetic root of this.
Well, when you're saying this, it makes me think, right? Because even like for me, like, and I've shared with you and been very open about it, like, even I came in like skeptical because there's a lot of people that throw on the like woo-woo terms like manifestation and energy healing and psychic and this. But just like to get it down, it's like, we all know, no person is going to argue that like being depressed or being very stressed out is bad for your health. Like, everyone agrees it's bad for your health. That's just energy. Those are, so it's like, if you're not aligned with your mission, if you're in a bad relationship, if you're not, what you're saying isn't congruent with your actions, right? Like, of course you're going to feel bad and be in bad energy. So how could you not get sick? So I love that you've taken this kind of understanding of it. And, you know, I think like part of the challenge for a lot of people, I'm not sure, maybe some listening, is like just getting past the stigma of like those kind of words and getting into it, because all this stuff you're doing and saying is really cool, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Even from like a rational, like take all the kind of like woo out of it.
Well, let me explain like my orientation point coming into this, because I know people meet me now like, oh yeah, Christina, you know, she does that. But this has been very confusing and hard for people who have known me since I was young, because I'm like the logical, the math girl, the science girl. And so to a lot of those people, it felt like, what's going on here? And I have maintained that perspective. I think most people who know me well, like the way I think is actually like hyper logical. Like it's like very linear.
You're confident in your masculine energy.
I'm very confident in my masculine energy. And there are a few ways like I went into that. One being, and because I get it, because before I think a lot of the manifestation, the energy thing, it wasn't landing for me because I just didn't get it. And it just sounded kind of fluffy. Like to me, it sounds like, I'm sorry if this triggers people, but it's like mindset work. Like mindset work, my eyes couldn't roll further into the back of my head. Like mindset work, like, and so where manifestation made sense to me was because I started from the neural reprogramming angle, right? So I came
like NLP or
kind of, I like more like Joe Dispenza kind
Got
of,
it,
right?
yeah.
So it's like, how is the brain working? What's the neuroscience? And I studied psychology, you know, in school.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, and so like a lot of that, there's the whole like neuroscience portion of your education. So I already kind of had that background, like how the brain works. And so I was kind of backing into it from that angle of like, okay, like this is how the brain works. And then we're looking at beliefs and we're looking at how the brain tells the body to change. And that's all very just scientific. And then also with energy work, like everything is measurable. You know what I mean? So it's like we've already measured electromagnetic fields. We've measured energy healers' hands and the energy coming off. Like there is a measurable difference of the energy moving through my hands when I'm turned on and sending energy than, you know, if you're just holding your hands up right now. Like this has all been measured. This isn't just like somebody making
it's not
it
like
up.
a pseudoscience.
Yeah, and it's quantum physics, which I think a lot, you know, we barely understand. It's hard to articulate, but for me, just exploring all of that, suddenly the whole world started to make logical sense to me. And I feel like my whole life I've been in this deep pursuit of like, can any of this make sense? Like none of this makes sense to me. And when I started exploring that more like quantum physics side of it, suddenly it was starting to make sense of like how the world works and like things like it's not a coincidence. That makes no sense to me. Like everything has an energetic cause, you know? And the other part of it for me has been, you have to remember like the way that I see, the way that I'm wired, I look at an energy body like an MRI scan. Like, so I see people's bodies, like I can see things. And so the way my brain works is I look at and I see like, oh, there's a block there and it's labeled this and it's connected to that and it's connected to that. And so if I remove this and pull it out, now the energy flows properly. So in my brain, it's like surgery, right?
Yeah.
And when I remove that, they have the physical experience of like it works. Do you know what I'm saying? So to me,
well, yeah, I did an energy session with you, and so I do.
Yeah,
get what you're saying. I felt great afterwards.
Right, and so the way that I'm looking at it is the same. And I'm not a doctor, but I'm saying like, imagine a doctor is figuring out, why is this not working in the body, and they get in there and they can physically see where the blockage is, or hey, there's a mass there that's causing this. For me, when I look at energy, I see it the same way, and nobody has to tell me what's going on, right? Like most people don't, right? I come and I will tell them what's going on, and like, yeah, that's exactly what's been happening, and there have been so many times where people come in, right, and I can remove the energy, and the problem is gone. Like whether that's physical or emotional, like that's a very normal thing for what I do. So my point with that is, for me, it is the most logical thing. Like it all makes sense and it all works.
Yeah.
Right. And that was one of the other things that I learned really through my health journey and figuring out how my body needed to heal. When I think about coming into like the health and wellness space and changing my diet, I had spent so long studying the research, and where I had the biggest turn in my health was when I started studying anecdotes. When I started studying forums, like just people's experiences, like all of that. And that was this whole set of data where I'm like, how can I read about thousands of people doing this and getting this result and say that that's not a thing? Like it's working, at the end of the day, like the way my brain works, I'm like, what works? what works. It's the same thing for me with business, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a very ambitious person. Like, the way I'm wired is I just want to figure out what works for me. And when I follow my psychic guidance and when I do energy work, it works. And it's really that simple. So there's that side of it as well, of like, that's undeniable. Why would I not do something if it's working?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because a couple of things you said. So like the first thing that I was thinking when you're talking about the shaman saying like, if you don't use the gift, like it kills you.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you said is like looking at anecdotes, like in recovery, right? Like you can't really go to a doctor, at least no one that I know, right? And like have them like heal you or give you a pill or like a therapy session. It's like, it's basically some people had this anecdote that like this thing works and this is what we did. And then it's this like tradition that follows. And then once you get to that point where you're in a good place in that, you have to then give away, once you're given the gift, right? You have to give it away to keep it.
Yeah.
So just like with the shaman, is like once you have the gift, if you don't give it away, it will kill you because, you know, people who get that gift,
Totally.
if they go out, like, you know, it can literally be deadly.
Yeah. 100%. Same thing.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it is logical for me.
Yeah.
It all makes sense. It all energetically tracks.
Well, one thing I always really like about talking with you is you help me understand that world. And it's not, it makes sense to me too. Like it's not, because I understand that like sometimes when we're dealing with energy or spirituality, I just, my experience is my logic or intellect can't always understand it, right?
Yeah.
Like I can explain to you like what it feels like to like, you know, stand in the sunshine, but until you stand in the sunshine and feel the warmth on your skin, it's a totally different experience, right? And that's how, for me, spirituality is.
Yeah.
And so I understand enough to know that like the logic and intellect isn't everything, but it is nice that you're able to like make this make more sense, because I think it's such an important thing. And I know for me too, like it's just in my own experience and my own journey, right? So this whole podcast, like roughly, we go on a lot of tangents and just want to talk with interesting people, but like Real Original, getting down to like, you know, we say like get real, right? So like get authentic, right? So you're living out of alignment and you get hit with this challenge and it forces you to be like, hey, you don't need to be the star student. You don't need to be the overachiever. This is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And then by the very nature of that, now you've come to this point of being Christina the Channel. And I'm guessing you don't need that outside validation anymore.
Definitely not.
So, yeah. So I think it's so cool. And a lot of times I know in my own story too, is like, I didn't just wake up one day and be like, I'm going to go do this. It was like, I was pushed into pain, a lot of pain, and then came out of it.
Yeah.
When you started, like your gifts started really turning on and you realized and you had, because when you say stuff, I'm sure even some people listening, when you're like talking about being visited by an angel and having these gifts and seeing things and hearing things, one, it sounds exhausting, but we'll get to that.
It's fun.
But yeah, but also, when did you like, what was it like, because you're on a podcast, you're very public and open, like what was it like? Did you have to like come out of the spiritual closet to family and friends, or like what was that like? Because I imagine like that would be scary, being like, hey mom and dad, like I see angels in there, like you're not coming to Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that has been a very like emotional thing for me. I don't give a shit what random people think about me.
Wow, from the girl who just needs outside validation.
I know, but
Love that.
that experience during that time, like I was put on very public blast, and for me it was like a survival thing. Like I have to stop caring about what people think, or I physically felt like I was going to die. Like, and that's a very real thing. You have to understand, like I was 70 pounds, like I was just skin and bones. I was, 6% body fat. Like I'm like skin and bones, and my doctors are like I had to avoid stress at all costs, because they're like, this could trigger a heart attack at any moment, right? Like it's like you're in a very testy state.
And how does that not make you stressed?
Yeah, and that
you know
makes you stressed. Yeah. And at the time, when you are realizing that all these people who you love, who you thought loved you, are talking shit behind your back, are spreading rumors about you, are posting images of you on social media, making up lies about you.
Are they saying what, like anorexia? Or
Yep,
bulimia?
yeah. And everybody's talking about you, but not to you, and no one's talking to you. You know, that's hard. That's hard. And I already had a semi-public platform, and there were different media outlets writing things about me. Like, I was a lot to deal with at one time. And so I just was like, I can't give a shit, you know? And the bigger lesson for me really through that whole experience was, who am I living for? And I realized through that experience with every aspect of my life, like I'm living for me. At the end of the day, like, if I die next week, I don't really care what Susie Q from my hometown thinks about me. Like, I actually
fuck you,
don't.
Susie Q.
I mean, not fuck you, but like, I just don't really care. You know, it's like not worth my energy. And so I had to really learn what's worth my energy. Yeah. And I realized, like, all I want to do is be happy, and like, what makes me happy. And if thinking about that doesn't make me happy, I'm just not going to think about it, you know? Like, and if doing this or having this life isn't going to make me happy, like, I don't want to do it. It's just as simple as that, you know? And so I changed my perspective in a very permanent way, if that makes sense. Yeah. I think coming out was different for me in different realms. Like, it was much easier for me to come out publicly than it was, I guess, with people in my life who had known me for a long time.
It is, because it's weird, because whenever, like, we have something, for some reason, like, I think the people closest to us, like, when we come out with something like that, it's like we're afraid that we'll be, I don't know, I would imagine rejected or that. But because I've experienced that in real estate, it's like people I'm close to, like, sometimes won't work with me. Yeah. And then people who don't know me will not only end up like you, end up working with me, and then we actually end up becoming better friends than a lot of people I've known a long time. Totally. So it's
Well, it's when you're going through a lot of identity shifts, it's so much easier to, like, just meet people as a new version of yourself than to try and get people to come along the journey with you, if that makes sense. And especially, that makes
so much sense.
Especially, you know, the people who there are people who were, like, very in it with me, who stayed with me because they were watching it unfold, and so they got it the same way I got it. Like, they were in the journey. And there are other people that weren't so in the journey but knew me for a long time, and because they didn't see all of the things that triggered me to become who I've become, it didn't make sense. Yeah. You know, and the truth of the matter is, I did get rejected by a lot of people, and I've lost a lot of friends, but I have collected and attracted such deep, amazing, incredible relationships now that are way better than those were. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and it's like, and I was talking to another guy on another episode, Dan Fulkerson, and he was very vocal about some stances that, like, can be interpreted as being, like, pretty polarizing. And he said the same thing. Like, he shedded a lot of people. He even got death threats, and, like, things were looking pretty grim. Yeah. And, you know, he's very public. Like, he has a business, all this stuff, right? And his name is on the business. But his business has since grown a lot. Totally. And he has more people that are more aligned with him. Is that your experience as well?
100,000,000%. I mean, because when you're authentic and you speak your truth, and the more, like, niche you are, it's sort of like dating. I always tell my clients with dating apps, everybody gets on a dating app, and they have trouble meeting people who are super aligned, because their profile is the type of profile, like, anyone would like you. Like, it's so vanilla, right? Yeah. It's like, I like sunset walks, you know. Sunday morning, I get a coffee with my friends, looking for somebody who, you know, I don't know, wants to have fun and has a positive outlook on life. It's like, that's so non-specific. You know, there's nothing controversial, right? Yeah. And here I am on a dating app, and I'm like, must be into extraterrestrials. I talk to non-physical spirits. Like, it's like, I'm like,
you hear that, guys? You got to be into aliens. Right? It's like, you have to let her talk to spirits. You can't get jealous when she's talking to male spirits.
I'm super specific, right? And, like, the whole point is, there should be a lot of people that are like, hell no, right? But for the person who's into that, who's like, who I want to, they're like, hell yeah, right? Yeah. And so I've always had a good experience on dating apps because I'm so specific. So anybody that actually wants to go on a date with me, like, is already, like, super aligned with me. And I'm like, because you have to get that specific, and it's been like that for me publicly, right? Like, the more I'm just open and I say what I think, which is what I do, and what I'm experiencing, there are so many people that have the same experiences as me that they just kind of flock my way. It's like so clear, such clear resonance. And you know what the thing is that for me, every iteration of my career, I hold such deep space for people, and I do have the honor and the privilege to get to see like a very inside look of people's lives and know a lot of their quote secrets, right? And what I've come to understand is that a lot of people like to pretend that they think certain things are weird or they haven't had these experiences, and they have. And so I just like call BS.
Classic human behavior.
Yeah, on a lot of it. And every person that was vocally rejecting me in my close personal life when I started talking about all this, I have since found out has had their own very intense personal psychic experiences. Like there's a reason it's triggering them. And I just think that, I mean, people can say whatever they want, you know, and it's like, if you don't resonate, you don't resonate, and that's fine. But a lot more people go through the same things we go through than we think do. Mm-hmm. And there's so many things we think we're alone in or we think is so niche. And it's like, no, there are a lot of people out there who can relate. Maybe not every single person in the world, but there are a lot of people out there who can. And that was, you know, for me, going back to my health journey, I learned that I felt so alone on an island. Like I felt like I was the only person in the world going through what I was going through. And then I like get into the internet, you know, and I'm like, holy shit, there's like so many people who have the exact same health journey as me. Yeah. And I have since found, I mean, I know so many people, right, who have basically the exact same health journey as me.
Where did you find those people on the internet? Were you on like, what sites? Like, so if anyone's listening and is like on a mystery health thing, like, is there like good ones, or did you just have to dive? Or
part of it, like a lot of blogs. I went to a lot of blogs and where people were sharing their journeys, and people in the comments of blogs, Reddit too, for sure. At the time, like Mark's Daily Apple was a huge place I found people. I went to a lot of like paleo communities, and then I would also go to like events related to that in the paleo space, like Paleo FX, things like that. And then I started publicly sharing my journey, and so people would find me. Like, so people were finding me and leaving comments on my page and like coming to my Instagram because I was talking about it. So I know a lot of people have met each other who have the same journey, like through my page. So I think for me, it was helpful finding other like blogs in the health and wellness space, people with different autoimmune diseases. And I would find people like through comments and then eventually like building my own platform around it. You know, it's like if people listening resonate with any part of my story, guess what? I have like tens of thousands of people in my community, and we're all the same. Yeah. Like, you're not alone, right? So
that's so comforting.
Yeah, it's great.
Is that what you mean? You said earlier, like holding space. Like, is that what holding space is like what is that? Because like when you said that, I'm kind of, and I've heard like spiritual people say that. Like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, I mean, holding space is a general term for, you know, if we want to sit down and you want to share, I just hold space for that. Like, I listen. And so for me professionally, every iteration of my business has been some type of coaching, so to speak. So my job is holding space, or my job is, hey, what do you need to talk about, or what are you moving through? And I hold the space for that person to share that with me, right?
So like a safe, non-judgmental.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, I'm holding space for people to share their things, to vent, to talk about it, to work through their problems. It's all about them. It's all about them. And we do that in all relationships, romantic, friendship, right? Like, and that's back and forth of holding space. And there are some of us where like that's, I mean, what I'm doing primarily in my business is I'm holding space for people.
That's really awesome. So I'm in a service industry too, and it can be very exhausting because I hold space for people and I help them through a process that can be stressful, as you know.
Yeah.
Right. Because for me, I have a deep desire to come from contribution and service, and I really love people and connection. What drives you to do this work? Because it sounds, frankly, like if I was hearing and seeing things and feeling things that other people aren't, it's like if we're in here and you think it's quiet and someone's playing music in the background, then I'm trying to listen to you and I'm hearing music or doing this. And I don't know if that's what you experience, but that's how I'm imagining it. Yeah. Like, it sounds exhausting. Like, what drives you, or what's your like why behind this? Because you're obviously really passionate about this.
A couple things, you know, this has just been inherent within me since I was very little. Like, as long as I can remember, I was just on this desperate search for what's my purpose. And I just remember being really young and feeling all of the hatred in the world and all the suffering in the world and feeling that so viscerally in my body and feeling like I don't want to be on this planet if there's not a purpose. Like, why am I here? I did not, like, we didn't come here just to suffer. Like, I refused to believe that. It didn't feel right for me. And I would ask that question. I remember of like my preschool teachers. I was like 3 years old. Like, what's our purpose? Why are people mean to each other? Like, you know what I mean?
I've always wondered that too. Why are people mean to each other?
And we'll get into it. And as I got older, I was so depressed and I had such extreme anxiety. And I just felt like, and again, I mean, I was suicidal and I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, what's the purpose of this? Like, for me to feel so awful all the time and to witness all these people around me, you know, and like see things on the news and know what's going on in the world. And I could just viscerally feel all of the unhappiness. And I just couldn't understand why I would be on this planet if that was it. Like, that just, I would not accept that. And I remember like just screaming to, you know, I didn't know at this point. I was like, didn't believe in God, but I also didn't believe in nothing. I didn't know what I was believing. And I was like, God, if you exist, like, show me my purpose. Like, and that was right before everything happened. Like, I got
God's
brought
like,
to my purpose.
All right,
yeah,
you want purpose?
yeah.
Here you go.
There you go. So
Get ready for a decade.
it's like, you know, it's like, why am I here doing this human thing, this earth thing? Like, why am I going through all this? There has to be a purpose to it. And so for me, like, getting clear on this is why I incarnated, like, great, let's do it. That's one. And the other, which goes hand in hand with that, is the ways that I have suffered and struggled in my own life. I just like literally don't want other people to.
Yeah.
And so if what I've gone through can help one person, like, I will scream it from the rooftops to make sure everybody hears it helps that one person. And because I know what it felt like to be in so many different ways in my life, such a dark place and feeling so alone, and what I would have, you know, given to have people who I thought like could really understand me or to give me like advice that could pull me out of it. And the people who did, like the people who I found who were sharing their stories publicly, who I could relate to, who, you know, I pulled those nuggets and it saved me. And so if I can pay that back, it's like, that makes it all worth it. Like, I don't know, you know, those are the things that drive me. It's purpose, it's mission, it's helping other people. It's, you know, turning my pain into my purpose. Like that's the whole point. And like, if that's not the point, why did I go through that?
I really love what you just said, and I really can identify with a lot of it. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think back to something you said earlier where you said, the more I channel, the more I will heal. Mm-hmm. And so basically the more you live your mission, the better your life will be.
100%. And that's a huge driver too. Like, the point is for us to feel good, right? And like, the more I'm on mission and living my purpose, I feel fucking amazing. I feel incredible. Like, I literally cannot believe the life I have now. Like, I'm in so much gratitude for it, because I never thought I would be this person. Like, I thought, and I know a lot of people who have depression, like clinical depression. Like, I was told this, like, you know, it's just something you kind of live with and you manage. And I remember looking at people smiling and thinking, like, I'm never going to feel that way. You know, I'm never going to have genuine happiness.
It's
like,
hopelessness.
Yeah, and it was like there would be days I would smile in moments, but there was still always that cloud over my head. Like, I was chronically sad and like acutely joyful. And for me to live the life I have now, to feel the way I feel now, genuinely, that happiness, I'm like, holy shit, like, anybody can turn it around, you know?
What you said is so important, and I really want to touch on that, because I have been exactly where you are. Mm-hmm. And I remember, like, doctors and people just write you off as, oh, you have depression.
Yeah.
Like, here, just take this pill.
Yeah.
And it's like, I, like you, kind of a stubborn SOB, and I'm like, I'm not going to accept that. Yeah. But there is that part where it's like, and I see a lot of people kind of get in this trap, and this isn't saying anything to people who really, like, have clinical depression, but I think a lot of people get, maybe go through something, they're not in alignment with mission and purpose and their vision and their values, and they feel depressed, they feel anxious, so they think, oh, I'm something's wrong with me. I need these pills, rather than I'm on the wrong path. Yeah. I'm with the wrong people. I'm not doing things that light me up, and I'm not connecting. It's funny, like, I wear this Whoop, right? Mm-hmm. And it measures your sleep and your recovery. Yesterday, because we were out late, I had way less sleep, but I had this great lunch with this guy, Patrick Combs, who's read The Power of Now 120 times and is just like so present and cool. And then I met up with you and some other really cool people. And even though my sleep was like short and bad, my recovery was like way up. And I felt really joyful, and connection, especially authentic connection with people you really vibe with, is so important.
100%.
And it really, I really felt it. And when I was looking at that like metric this morning, I was like, I really felt like this is why.
100%.
Because the other night I got like over 8 hours and my recovery was shit. And I was like,
I know.
what's going on? So it's so crazy how much like connection and energy really does.
It's not crazy though. I mean, aren't there lots of like studies when they measure a lifespan?
Let me take that back.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Not that it does.
Yeah.
It's crazy that it's not more talked about, or that when you
100%.
talk about it, people are like, you're crazy. You're a fucking idiot. Like,
well,
take this pill. Eat this seed oil food. Just shut the fuck up. Take this shot. Here's a Krispy Kreme. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
I mean, as somebody who has been like a psychopath about their health and wellness routines, and I do baseline, I'm very like pretty squeaky clean, but where a lot of my healing happened was when I stopped giving a shit. Like, and I think about, you know, this week, for example, I've barely slept. We've had long days. I'm working like a lot, and my team keeps being like, how the fuck are you doing this? And I'm like feeling amazing. Like, I'm having endless, incredible conversations. I'm seeing so many people I love. Like, I'm just high off the vibes. You know, it works.
High off the vibes,
high
baby.
off the vibes. Yeah. And, you know, I want to go back to that depression comment though, because, and again, I'm not saying my experience is going to be anybody else's experience. In my experience, you know, I had been diagnosed. I went through many different psychologists, worked with my psychiatrists, and I literally went through every SSRI possible, and eventually they diagnosed me as SSRI intolerant. Okay? Like, I've tried it. And
your body and the universe won't let you go down the path you're not supposed to be on.
I know. And every psychologist I worked with and psychiatrist, I remember going in there, I'm like, look, I am totally down with this process. Like, and I show up to it, and, you know, but I need to understand why I am depressed. And nobody seemed to be able to answer that. Like, and I didn't need them to answer it, but I wanted that to be the conversation of, can we get to the root of why I am depressed? And I just felt like I was hitting my head against the wall with all of these psychologists, all these psychiatrists, where they would not engage in that conversation with me. I was like, I will take the pill. I was like, I will do this process. I will, you know, all the different types of, all the different approaches. I will do this. I said, but this doesn't just come out of nowhere. Like, there has to be a reason. There has to be a cause. And nobody would really engage in that conversation with me. And it drove me insane. And I feel like, you know, now going through this journey, I was like, I was fucking right. Of course there's a cause. I was out of alignment. Is that really that insane? Like,
No.
Why was nobody engaging in that conversation with me? You know, and I even think about like all the years in therapy, and there's so much value in having that space to share, but there are just so many loops. And I look at like the things that work for me now, and it's like, let's get out of the loop and move the energy and go in a different direction. And like, how great is it that I can just cyclically tap in and be like, this is where you're out of alignment, and let's change it.
So let me ask you this, because I think a lot of people listening, if they're interested in the topic or kind of like overall just kind of ethos of this podcast, would love to be able to just like not give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like you, right? And just be able to just be out there and be themselves and be on this mission. And also, like, you're killing it in business too, right?
Thanks.
So it's not like, you know, so you're doing great. You're fulfilled in life, right? You're helping people. Your business is doing well. And you also don't really care what people think. Like, if you could tell people who are listening, like, what would be like the first thing, or like the quickest steps to get to a place of like not caring, and then like get in, like find out and get and move into alignment?
Well, what I want to say first is, Well, it's not that I don't care about what anybody thinks, right? Like I care about people who I love.
I mean, you took a shower today and like came in like with, you know,
yeah, you know what I mean? But it's all the random noise, right? It's about for me to realize what's worth my energy.
Yeah.
And we live today in a world where we're being asked to share and exchange energy so much more than we're biologically meant to.
Yeah.
Like the number of people we're connected with and the number of opinions that just get thrown our way. Like we're not meant to deal with that, you know, like on a physiological level. I mean, I think the human body is really, I remember like I remember in class in college, us learning like we really only have the psychological capability to have 6 deep relationships. And you're really not designed to meet more than 150 people in your life. And I'm like, I mean, I talk to more than 150 people by far, you know, like, and we have that. Look, go to the internet, you have thousands and thousands of people sharing their opinion. Like, we're not built for that.
Billions, actually.
Yeah, really, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, billions of people aren't usually commenting on someo's post.
No, but you know what I mean, on the internet.
Yeah, it's like, that's a lot to deal with. And so for me, it's about priorities. And there are so many places where I just genuinely don't care because of how much I care. Does that make sense? It's like, because
Elaborate.
I care, like people I care very deeply about my community, about my friends, about my family. I love them so much. I love myself so much. And because I care and love myself and those people in my life so much, and because I care about my mission, I prioritize that. That's what I care about. And so, no, I don't give a shit what this negative person has to say. Like, you don't need to be in my reality. Does that make sense? Like,
it makes total sense, and it's like
it's mama bear energy essentially. It's like I don't care, you know, because I care so much. And for me, it's like, what is my why? What is my why? And what's driving me? And that's something I have to always come back to, because I'm not motivated if I don't know my why. It has to be that important to me. It has to be the main priority where like everything I'm doing is in that direction. And for me, like it comes back to caring. It comes back to loving is really why.
So in one sentence, what would you say your why is?
In one sentence, what is my why for my...
It's your big why. One sentence. I mean, you said loving.
Freedom.
Freedom. I love it. It's a powerful one.
Freedom, 100%.
I love all the things you said, because it's like, when I'm thinking of like, because I get in the danger, like, because I'm thinking this way, right? So I know other people listening probably are too, right? It's like, well, Christina doesn't give a fuck what people think, so how can I be like that? But it's not, it's from what I'm seeing and hearing, that's not the thing to focus on. Yeah. The thing to focus on is just get aligned with who you are, and then find out why you're here, what your purpose is. And that's what this is. That's why I say get real, be original. Because if you get real, get authentic, right? And what I mean by authentic is like, whatever note is on the music and you're hitting on the piano, they're the same. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're doing that and you're in key and you're on tune, right? And you're actually connecting with people authentically that like you for you, and you're helping people, and you're on this mission. Because I know when I've been there and I'm really aligned and really on that path, I really don't care what people think. So it's not like, we can't focus on like, oh, how do I not care? Because it's still focusing on the problem.
Yeah.
Because you're still focusing on, it's like a negative affirmation.
Totally.
Right? If you do affirmations, you have to say like, I have, I will, I am. So they have to be positive. Because if you say like, I am not fat, your brain just hears, I am fat. Yeah. Right? And so your RAS picks it up that way. So it's so funny. I love these talks because I'm getting so much from them. And I hope people listening, I hope that hits you like it hit me right now. But that's just that great reminder that I think I really needed, is just like, go, for me, it's like, Michael, get back on your mission, get back in alignment, and like keep doing that. Because I know when I've been there and really truly been there, it's like, I don't care. Yeah. Because I know I'm living with integrity. I know I'm helping people. So if you judge me, or if I made a mistake and we've just met and I made a mistake, it's like, sorry, man, I'm human. You know what I mean? Totally. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
For me, it's like knowing whose opinion matters to me, right? Because it's a nuance thing. It's not just I don't care, right? Like I
I get
respect
you.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you're like, Christina, like, I want to bring this up to you. I want to listen, and I want you to share that blind spot with me, right? Like, I do care. But it's
Well,
learning.
honesty is love.
Yeah, honesty is love, as I said. And so I think that's important. I think a lot of people are very worried about people's opinions, and you have to ask, why do I care about their opinion? And it comes back to, if I love myself and I love my life, I'm not very concerned about what other people are saying, and the way that I receive what they are saying is going to be different as well, right? So for me, like, there were so many things that used to trigger me when I was younger because I was so worried about other people's opinions of me. And now it's like, I just don't get triggered, because if I love myself, who I am, like, genuinely, and I love my life, then it's none of that matters. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. And that's the thing. And that's what I discovered when I started, like, on this journey of working towards, like, finding myself and living authentically. And what you're saying, it's like, because when I was living, like, in this world and I'm inauthentic, I don't know how to be. So I have to try to be something I don't know how to be, and I'm not. And so I have to be really concerned what people think, and, like, test and react and this and that. And I can't say this in front of this person because maybe I can't do business with them or whatever, rather than just being like, I know how to be me. Mm-hmm. I can be me. And when I'm being me, I'm happy and I'm doing it. And one thing too is, like, I've experienced a part where I really, like, first got real with, like, who I was. And when I did that, there was, like, things about me that I was like, I'm kind of a piece of shit in these regards, or I really don't like this about myself. Did you have any of that? Did you, like, when you kind of went through this, like, what did you experience that? And did you have to change anything about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, so much of, like, kind of that task of let me really get to know myself, which is an ongoing journey, of course, right? Because I'm always changing and learning more things, and new conversations bring up new things within me. But that first go at it was very intentional trauma healing and shadow work, you know. And when you're like, I'm gonna go on this path of shadow work right now in my life in a concentrated way, it brings up a lot within yourself, you know. And so we all have behaviors we don't necessarily like. And so I just took all of those, and the whole concept with shadow work is, like, let me accept that piece of myself and see if I either can just not act on it, or can I transmute it and shift it. And so I looked at all of those pieces, and I asked myself, why do I do that? Or why am I like that? Or why do I think that? And over time, I've collected all of those and, you know, either transmuted them or seen them in a new light, or things that maybe I didn't like about myself before, like you learn to love, or you realize that's what makes you unique. I mean, even just my gifts, right? Like, for so long, I resisted it. I hated it. Like, I didn't want my mission. You know, I didn't want to have all these gifts.
I didn't want some of my gifts either.
Yeah, you know, and, like, now I'm like, oh my God, I love this about myself. It's the most interesting part of me. It's like what makes me me, you know?
It makes life meaning and profound.
100%. Yeah. So, yeah, there are all kinds of things that I realized, like, and I think for me, a lot of what I didn't like about myself were, like, these defense mechanisms I had created to,
like what?
To shut people out, because I've always had that wound. People don't understand me, and people can't understand me. And definitely, like, a lot of abandonment wounds. And so I would do a lot of things to, like, push people away, put a guard up, like, snap. You know, I used to be really reactive. I would get mad really easily. I was very, like, would never forgive people. I would hold grudges. I was just like, one and done, you crossed me, you're out, you know, like, and that was all just my own wounds and my own fears, and me wanting to leave before somebody left me, and me not wanting to get hurt, and me wanting to present with such a tough shell to protect my gooey inner world, and my deep emotions. And I had experienced in my life so many times where my strong emotions, I felt like, were turned against me and used against me as a weakness. And so I tried to always hide them, and I didn't like how emotional I was, you know? And so then I created other behaviors that I didn't like even more, where I would snap, and I would get angry instead of showing my true emotion, which was sadness. So there was a lot of that, you know, that I didn't like about myself. And it was a lot of pushing people away, shutting people out, you know, but yeah, we all have our stuff. And so I had to look at all that stuff.
So and thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. You're a very multidimensional person, which is a segue into, you have a podcast too.
Yeah.
Called what?
Multidimensional.
Ah. What's that about?
My podcast?
Yeah.
Well, Michael's a guest. Yeah, I mean, we recently changed the name. This is the 4th name. I've had this podcast for 10 years, and I've rebranded it a couple times. Like any long-term relationship, right? You got to shift the container.
You got to spice it up.
You got to spice it up, you know, shift the energy around. So we recently rebranded it. And for me, the last sort of iteration was a lot of like solo episodes and talking straight about spirituality. And I think the thing is, I don't fit in energy honestly still applies for me. I feel like in the spiritual bubble I'm a part of, and then also like, let's say the entrepreneurship bubble or whatever that is, it's like, I feel like I'm always straddling these two worlds where I'm too spiritual for these people, but I'm too normal and mainstream for these people. Yeah. And I felt like that my whole life in different ways. And I think what I want to show through this iteration is that intersection and like from where I'm standing and how I see it all overlapping and how we're all talking about the same thing just with different terms. And when I think about multidimensionality, we talk about that, you know, in my community about, you know, you are a soul in a physical vessel and you are living in many different timelines right now, many different realities, many different dimensions. Who are you as a soul? Your past timelines, your future timelines, you know, all these different fractals of who you are expressed in so many different realities. Like there's that very spiritual quantum angle to it. But then when I think about people and how just multidimensional they are here in this reality, in this time space reality, like that is what I geek out over the most. Like I just love people. I love to learn about why they are the way they are. I love to find the aspects of them that the rest of the world doesn't see, you know, and the things that people don't lead with, because everybody has a story and everybody has things they're into that people don't realize, or like, you know, people make judgments and it's like, what's behind the judgment? What's really going on? And so I wanted to come back to like interviewing the way that I used to interview when I first started, and the show has changed a lot over time, and just really show people like every single person is multidimensional, and here are all of the different ways that expresses itself. And so some conversations might have more of a spiritual edge to it, and others are going to be more like how I'm multidimensional as a human being right here. So that's, you know, those are the different aspects for me of multidimensionality. It's just all of it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And if you like podcasts, definitely check it out.
Thanks.
And so another dimension of your many multi-dimensions is you're an author.
Yeah.
And you also do energy healing at events. Like one of the things I've seen is like you advertise is you do events with somehow incorporate Harry Potter.
Oh.
And like what is that? Because I always wonder, and I'm like, what? How does that fit in?
I hosted a retreat, like a Harry Potter themed retreat. I don't like. It's not like a regular.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I hosted one retreat that
well,
was
your
Harry Potter
story
themed.
kind of is like Harry Potter. Like when you were describing
totally.
it, I was thinking about it where they're like he's experiencing these things and the thing with the snake and
Yeah.
all this stuff, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, you're a wizard," and he's like, "No, I'm not." And then
I'm a huge Potterhead, and I have this whole series I did in my membership where we watched all the movies together, and then I broke down basically all the movies and how they map onto our reality here, because there are just so many parallels. And those movies are a great way to learn about energy work and manifestation and, you know, all kinds of different spiritual concepts. So, I mean, I love Harry Potter. It's been one of my favorite things
that
since I was a
clears
kid.
that up. I was like, what a you're just fangirl.
Yeah, love it.
So your other things too, and I know you have an event coming up where you're doing a channeling, right? So I noticed that a lot of stuff, like if you look at your social media, it talks about Oracle or the Oracle, and it talks about channeling. So like what exactly is a channeling event? What or who is the Oracle?
Yeah.
And what's your event all about? If people are listening to this and they're like they're interested.
Yeah.
And, you know, everyone I've brought on is local, it's San Diego.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing a lot of people who are going to
Well,
be
I
listening
think
to people I
it
know in
will
San
have
Diego.
passed when this comes out, no?
Actually, you know, maybe we're going to have to just do an express clip.
Express clip, yeah.
You know what? You're right. Sorry, you missed
okay.
it.
Yeah.
Y'all missed it. And it was great.
Yeah.
I'm going.
Do you want me to still talk about it?
If you want to.
Do you want me to talk about it?
Well, yeah, I'm curious. What's the oracle? Like, I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah, we'll find out.
All right, I'll wait to find out.
So, going back to, and this is where, like, you know, going into the psychic bubble, and there's all different ways that we can use our psychic abilities, and there's so many different ways that we can read the field and communicate with different energies. And for example, like mediumship, a lot of people are familiar with mediumship being I'm connecting with beings who have transitioned to the other side, you know. So I'm talking to my grandma who passed away, right? There are psychic mediums who connect with people who have crossed. That's one orientation point you can tap into. Other people, and you can do all of these, but a lot of people will specialize in a certain area. Let's say you're talking to the angels, or you're talking to the angelic realm, right? You're talking to like more of the classic spirit guide realm, you know, like.
So
hey,
there's different realms with different.
Yeah, it's kind of like different dimensions and different types of beings, or like ETs. You know, some people do a lot more galactic work. There's different types of energies and entities we can tap into on the other side, and you can think of those as kind of just different. I think of it as like different levels in the building, right? Just different beings are hanging out on different floors, and so, it's a complex world over there, right? You're working with a lot of different dimensions. So for me, there are different ways that I channel, and channeling broadly, that I consider channeling to be anytime you're in flow state. Really, right? You're channeling. Like if you're writing your book, or you're writing a song, or you're playing basketball, like you're in channel mode, right? It's like something bigger, something is moving you.
Yeah,
right?
I've experienced that.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like you're in your automatic writing. Like that's channeling. But then there's, you know, the way that we talk about channeling in my bubble of the spirituality space, which is I'm communicating with non-physical beings, right? So I'm channeling information. I'm bringing information from the other side, so to speak. And
so like Abraham Hicks kind of.
That's channeling. And so that's a great example. Like then when I go a layer deeper into channeling, there is conscious channeling, which is I can talk to the beings around us, and I'll talk as me, kind of what I'm doing in a session with you, where I'm saying your spirit guides are saying this, right? I'm getting this, where I'm conscious as Christina, and I'm sharing what they're saying, right? I'm consciously channeling.
So you're hearing like.
Yeah, I'm hearing, I'm seeing, you know, however people perceive for me, all of it. And I'm basically,
it's trippy.
I'm acting as the medium in between, right? So that's a way that you're consciously channeling, or, you know, I'm tapping into a dimension and I'm just sharing all the information coming through. And there's something called trance channeling, which is where you kind of like, you step out, you go into a trance-like state, you put yourself in a trance-like state. Similar to, you know, when people go into hypnosis and information comes through when they're in hypnosis. So you put yourself into a trance, and the energy you're connecting with speaks through you and basically uses your, you know, vessel. There's also direct voice channeling, which is where you're not in a trance, but that entity is basically just using your voice box directly. So there's different types of channeling. We're getting like nerdy here in the spiritual realm. I do all of those different types of channeling. And when I'm channeling, I usually am in the direct voice / I call it a blended channeling experience, or a trance channeling. So essentially what happens is my consciousness steps out of my body, and I am usually in one of two places, so to speak. I'm either in the corner of the room and I'm watching,
You mean your consciousness?
My consciousness. So my experience when I am in channel mode, like when you're seeing me do that, my POV is I'm in the corner of the room and I'm watching, is one option. Or my POV is I always say it looks like, you know, Windows XP desktop screensaver, like blackness with colored movement.
All those little
right?
like pipey things?
Yeah. I'm up there in the astral, and I'm getting the same information just kind of in a different way, like vibrationally, essentially. So I'm like out of the experience. When I come back in, I'm like, what happened? You know, I don't know what happened. So one of those two things goes on. That's my personal, like what's happening for me. And you know, like this event, what's going to be happening is I'm going to step out, and one of the beings that I channel, she calls herself the Oracle. And she's going to be doing that whole event is like day one. So that's one of the ways, you know, that happens.
Well, I've never been to one of those events, and I know people have been to Abraham Hicks, and I've always wanted to go to one.
It's just like Abraham Hicks.
So I'm excited.
Yeah. So Abraham Hicks is a really well-known channel. Bashar is another example. A lot of people know he's in a trance. You know, so Cryon's another popular channel. Yeah. So Abraham Hicks is probably the most well-known.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
like, when was the first time that you channeled something? And then were you, like, trying to do it, or did it just, like, happen? Because I read the book about, like, I have a mentor who, was the first one to teach me mindset stuff and manifestation and power of all this stuff. And I didn't believe it, Mr. Skeptical. And then I did it, and everything I followed everything he said to do.
Yeah.
And all the stuff, like, I wrote came true. And it was really the way the universe, like, orchestrated everything. It was just evident that there was something that I tapped into that I hadn't experienced, but there was a knowingness that, like, there's something here.
Yeah.
Right. And so he was into Abraham Hicks and was like, read this book. So I was reading one of the books and talking about Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks. They're talking about the first experience they had channeling, where, like, she was in a meditation and her head started just spelling, I think, Abraham. What was your first channeling experience, and, like, what was that like, and when did it happen?
So I'm assuming you mean like trance channel, like that kind of channeling.
I guess, like, because, you know, I'm sure people listening, if they're like me, like, aren't in that bubble.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I guess, like, yeah, like, were you, I guess specifically the one where, like, you're not in your body, like, your consciousness isn't there, and, like, there's something.
Totally.
Because that seems scary.
I know. So I had, up until this point, you know, it had been a couple years that I had been doing energy work and talking to the other side, you know, and so it was a very regular thing for me. You know, I sit down, and again, you have to remember, like, I see holograms. Like, it's not like, for me, it's not like an invisible force. It's like visible. I see it. So my guides and these different beings are, like, around me, and I chat. You know, we're just like I do at dinner with you guys. It's just, they look like a hologram. They're not, I can put my hand through them, right?
Do they look like people, or do they look like shapes, or, like, what
it depends on the being. I work with a lot of ascended masters who, like, are more well known, and so they will come to me like a person. Like, they look like a person, and sometimes they come different, like, versions of themselves. And sometimes it's like a glowing orb, right? So it's usually one of those two forms. Like, it looks like a physical being, or it'll be like a glowing orb. But usually it's more of the being. And so the first time I went into trance, I mean, I really did not know much about any of that. Like, I hadn't had any experience with trance channels. So I really didn't see it coming. I kept getting messages like my life was going to change, and, like, something big was going to happen. But I was thinking, like, very different. I was not thinking like that. And I was doing all this, like, I was doing all this spirituality work as my, like, background thing for a long time before it ever became public. Like, I had, like, a very successful public facing, like, not spiritual business, you know? So it was just kind of like my private thing. And I had just moved into a new place. And I remember I was sitting and meditating, and all of a sudden, like, I dropped in kind of like a different place within meditation. Like, I was somewhere else, and my head just kind of dropped. Like, I just felt like my whole body relax, and words just started coming out of my mouth. Like, something was moving my mouth, and I was talking, and I remember having this whole inner dialogue, like, what the fuck is happening? What am I saying? And it felt like, in my body, I felt like God had entered me. Like, it felt like just, like, pure divine love. Like, you know what I'm saying? And
I've never experienced anything like that, but I've been in a room where someone was speaking and everything got more clear.
Yeah.
And the sentiment that I had is, like, God or some force is speaking through this person. And it was a really profound experience, but I've never had it through me. So I understand what you're saying, but but it's hard to imagine actually being the person experiencing that.
Yeah. And so, I'm feeling that and I'm talking, like something's coming out of my mouth and I'm having this whole inner dialogue. I'm like, what am I saying? I'm like, I need to grab my phone and record this. And I had this sense of whatever I was saying was important. And it's kind of like, have you ever heard of, people who are incredible speakers and you don't even at a certain point know what they're saying, but their energy, like, yes. Like, this is so important. You're not even really fully consciously processing what they're saying. Yeah. And so it was like that. I was like, this is important. There's something really good coming through. And I was like, but I'm scared to move because, if I move, am I going to mess it up? And it was like this, it was kind of funny, the way all that was playing out. And then eventually it stopped and I woke up and I was like, what just happened? And, the next night it happened again, but this time I was prepared and I recorded it and I listened back and the messages were so profound and so powerful. And I was like, whoa. And thankfully I had a lot of different mentors around me and I didn't really know what was going on. And so I immediately went to my different mentors and asked, and people were like explaining what was happening. And so I got directed to a few other trance channels who do that as their career. And so I talked to them and got some, you know what I mean? Like with like anything, any tool, you want to use everything safely. I want to be clear of like, what's the process and exactly what's coming into my body, So I started, learning to work with that and refining that and making sure that that didn't become, like at first it was happening kind of spontaneously just to get my attention. And then I learned how to like control that and like, exactly what's coming in and like I'm timing it and all of that. And so, I train that. I have mentors and people who help me and
help you develop your gift.
Yeah. Like, it's kind of like this raw, untamed thing. And immediately I'm like, the same way with my other psychic abilities, where those used to be sometimes kind of like detrimental to me. I mean, that led to so much of my mental health problems because you're a child seeing some really scary stuff all the time, right? So it's like to learn to have your on and off buttons, learn to control that, to not be overstimulated. I used to have a really hard time just being in like public settings with a lot of people because it is like a million different radio stations playing at once. Like I thought my brain was going to explode. So, learned to refine that, learned to work with that. And yeah, that's just kind of how it started. And I kept refining that, practicing that, learning that, and the things that have come through with that modality have been so profound. And there's like a vibration that's moving through you that's so different than when you're consciously channeling. It's something that is just felt. I don't know how else to describe it. Like it's energy work embodied through what they're saying. And there are so many things that come through when I'm in that state that just quite simply can't when I'm conscious because my human is still there as a filter. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Like all of this sounds like to the rational mind, the rational person, the rational listener, unbelievable. Like not like, how could this be real? Or like, yeah, she's full of it, right? Because it's so out there, but even kind of like, and I'm thinking that like, this is really hard stuff to believe. But then at the same time, I go in my mind, it's like, I've had some profound spiritual experiences, like kind of like seeing like just this, having this knowingness that something is speaking through this person. Mm-hmm. And like literally things got clearer almost like, and I have good vision. I don't wear glasses or anything, but it got very clear. Like the lights were brighter. Like it was really profound. And I think a lot of people have had profound experiences or experienced miracles or how did I meet this person at this time and everything comes together. But why do you think we're so quick when we hear about someone else's to be like, yeah, that's bullshit? Because do you get that? Because I can imagine like a lot of people are probably like, yeah, you're full of shit. Right? Like,
maybe they are. Maybe they are, but no, I don't get that.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't really come up
real
for
to me
in my reality. Like, just I'm sure there are people that think that, and that's okay. It's like with any channel, but there's all kinds of things that people do in their lives. I could look at you and make a judgment and be like, what the fuck are you doing? But like, I don't, because it's your life and do what makes you happy. And it's like, if it helps people, it helps people. You know what I'm saying? Like,
for sure.
So the thing is that people are very afraid of what they don't understand.
That's
and
for sure.
people are very afraid of the truth.
They're
very afraid of the truth. The same way, just in my daily life, I know a lot of people don't like me because I'm so direct. I'm not a comfortable friend to have.
No,
I'm not.
But I actually love that about you.
And that's the thing is, I have a lot of friends, and they're all the personality type like me, because I like to receive that as well. We call each other out. We're brutally honest in a very loving way, and like that, we're all high achieving entrepreneurs, like want to get to our next level, want to optimize our health and wealth, like all of that, right?
Yeah.
And it comes to that personality, like tell me the truth, tell me your opinion, tell me what I'm not seeing. I want to consider that. And so that like lights me up, but there are a lot of people in the world that they don't want to know the truth, right? Because they want to stay comfortable. And once you know, you can't unknow, right? Once you know that you're in an out of alignment relationship, you got to leave, right?
Yeah.
Once you know that your job is sucking the life out of you, you got to leave, or you're just going to sit there in even deeper discomfort about, I know this is a problem and I'm choosing not to do it. And most people would rather stay blissfully ignorant. They'd rather not know so they don't have to deal with it. So most people are afraid of the truth for whatever reason. And most people, I know a lot of this touches on a much deeper, like, what is my worldview and what are the paradigms that I have been latching onto my whole life. It's sort of like for when people find out things about the government, for example, it's like people don't want to see what's going on, or the
government's never done anything wrong.
Like big pharma, the health system, like people don't want to see that, because suddenly the foundation of everything I trust and believe in, it's like, now who can I trust? And our inner child does not want to feel like I have been lied to. Our inner child wants to feel like mom and dad are taking care of me. The medical system and the government are going to take care of me, right?
They're coming to save me.
Yeah, they're coming to save me. And when you realize it's a giant clusterfuck and everybody's lying to you, people don't want to deal with that, because they don't want to take personal responsibility. They don't know how to take agency in their own lives, and they don't want to deal with it. And that's scary. And most people don't want to sit with that emotion. Most people do not know how to sit with low frequency emotions, with hard emotions, with sadness, with anger, with fear, right? People do crazy shit when they're afraid. We've seen it. They do crazy shit because they don't know how to just feel that and how to transmute it, right? And so when I'm going in a direction, and obviously this bumps up against people's religious beliefs, right? Like, suddenly I'm channeling demons, and here you are quoting Jesus, who was a psychic. Like, it's in the Bible. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, and I think that was the thing for me. Like, I grew up Catholic. I grew up in a very religious family. And now I'm like, wow, suddenly I learned in religion class, like, it all makes sense, like, from this lens. And so it bumps up against people's worldviews, and that's okay. And people don't have to like it or understand it. That's fine. But I think a lot of that resistance is just, I don't know how to process that, because I'm not willing to process it, because it would require me to change my beliefs.
Yep. And that's the thing, is it's really hard to change beliefs, especially deep held beliefs, because it's like, our egos hold on to them. 100%. And so when our ego is threatened, it's like a death.
Yeah, it's safety within your system,
Yeah.
And that can, here's the thing, there's a very real, like, tribal community, like, this can break my family apart. This is a huge thing. I've worked with, thousands of people, and they're going through their spiritual awakening, for example, and all of their relationships they lose, or like, suddenly their family is rejecting them. That's a very, like, of course we don't want that. These are people we love, and we love them, and we don't want to get rejected, and our bodies interpret that as, I'm getting cast out and I'm going to die, because if I'm not with the tribe, I get no food, right? Yeah. On a very physiological level. And so that of course doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to feel like you're being rejected by your parents or your husband or your wife, And so it's not easy at all. Yeah. And that takes a lot of courage to say, this is my experience and this is what I'm believing now, because I'm questioning my beliefs. And not everybody wants to engage in healthy discussion around that. I think a lot of people are just very closed-minded, and they're unwilling to question. Yeah. And I don't, for me, it's just like, that's how some people live, and that's how they live, and it's not really like my problem. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I totally do. Yeah. I just I ask because I'm curious, or I just think like if I were, like, just thinking about what your experience must be like, because I think it must be tough. Like when you are channeling or hearing these things, like, it sounds exhausting. Like, what do you do? Like, do you have like what's your like self-care? What's your wellness routine? Like, what do you do to like keep yourself? Like, what do you do for you? Because to be able to like work with people, coach people, run like multi-successful, like you have multiple businesses, podcasting, right? You have all these things that you do, plus communicating and channeling and all of this stuff with all these entities. Like, what do you do for Christina, and what's your like self-care routine or your routine to make sure like you're taken care of to be able to serve others?
Yeah. I want to say off that last question, like to bring it kind of full circle, because I think this is important for people. Like, a lot of people push it away when they feel like it's the fringe or outside thing, if that makes sense. And I think what people need to understand, again, is we all live in our own bubbles. Like, culturally, philosophically, like, that we have our orientation point of what's normal. And for me, I'm like, there's literally millions and millions of people where all this channeling stuff is totally normal. Like, everybody's talking about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that's where, like, from my orientation point, when people say that, I'm like, from where I stand, though, this isn't weird. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, I know personally at least 200 trans channels, like, personally, you know? So that's just kind of like the bubble thing, right? Yeah. Like, there's that. What do I do for self-care? A lot. I mean, my health and wellness practices are really important. You know, I have really strict boundaries with communication with people. I don't like to be spending a lot of time on my phone. I don't like inefficient communication. You know how I am with my time. I'm a shark with my time. I value my time. I need to have time to rest and just be with myself. I need to have fun, vitamin F. You know, I need to live and do fun things and travel and explore and meet new people. And my simple pleasures, you know, go get brunch, get a lot. Like, it's like I build that into my life, you know. I think a lot of it is just, you know, I get to create my own schedule. So I create it in a way where I feel good, getting enough sleep, of course. But for me, it's really about making sure I have those connection points with people I love. You know, spending quality time with people I love is the most important thing. I use all of the practices, you know, that I help other people with. Like, energy work for me is huge. Meditation is huge. Journaling is huge. Connecting with my spirit guides and doing energy healing on myself. Like, that's one of the main ways I clear things. I balance things out. I regulate time in nature, hiking, grounding, all of that. And of course, having other people hold space for me. You know, like, I have to be poured into. Like, I love to pour into other people. I pour into people so much, and I also want to receive that equally, and I do, and I'm grateful to have people in my life who do that. So whether that's mentors, masterminds I'm in, friends I have, those are spaces where I can, like, I don't have to be the one holding the space for other people, and, like, making sure other people can hold that space for me. I have to have that, because otherwise it feels like everybody's my client, you know? So it's just about reciprocation in my life. Like, I really don't have room for unreciprocated relationships, and I'm very particular about who's in my inner circle and whose energy I'm connecting with. And yeah, those are all the things that I do for myself. I feel like most of my life is self-care, honestly. It's
important. I think, like, one of the things that I've learned is, like, we can't, like, if you haven't got it, like, you can't give it away. Yeah. 100%. Right. So it's like, for us, we've got to kind of, like, when you're in the airplane, it's like, put on your mask and then the sista's next to you. Totally. So on the other side of the coin, right, because I didn't mean to go down like a negative thing with, like, the naysayers. What about the people that are listening that are like, I've never told anyone in my life that when I was 5 years old, like, an angel came to visit me. Yeah, or which is I'm most like, people. Just so people have perspective. Like, this is the thing. It's most people. And you said everyone has psychic gifts, right? Yeah. So let's, and I think that's true, because, like, I've definitely had, like, a dream and then been somewhere and been like, I was here in a dream. Yeah. And it was a really weird experience, or just had, like, a knowingness that something was going to happen, and it did. So, like, I think most people have had experiences like that, right? Would those be, like, what you consider kind of, like, tapping into those 100% psychic gifts? So, like, what would you say to the people that are like, okay, I've had those experiences, I relate to you and identify with you. Like, where does one start to kind of, like, explore this and develop this? I think one starts by identifying how that intuition is coming through, and then starting, if you want to develop it, like, leaning into it more, because what it's do you just mean by how, though? Just knowing where to look. So one of the first things, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, is identifying, like, which of your senses is strongest. Most people have one that they're resonating with a lot, whether it's, hey, I'm a really visual person. Like, you know, if somebody's talking,
I'm imagining it in my mind's eye. Like I'm visualizing it up here. Or, you know, when you're hearing a story, do you visualize it? Not everybody does. People don't realize that, right? Do I remember my dreams a lot? Some people, it is very like prophetic, you know, they will have a dream and then it happens the next day. Do you have a lot of deja vu, right? Things like that. That's more of a visual. You get a lot of signs around you. The thing is, everybody receives a lot of signs. They just don't notice the signs. That's my point. It's like, once you're looking for the signs, right, you see them everywhere. So you have to know what to look for. Or the audio piece, do you hear a lot of thoughts in your head? And most people think they're all their thoughts, and a lot of those are the downloads, your higher self. It's starting to tune into what's my higher self versus what are my mind's thoughts. And those have a different kind of quality and texture, maybe can come from a different place. Like for me, it feels like it's more coming from the top of my crown, and my thoughts feel like very heady. And then some things will come in kind of like through the base of my neck. Like if I really think about the thought, right? That's what I'm saying. Like these things are going on all the time, but we're not usually thinking about like where did that thought come from, and did it just drop in out of nowhere, or did it have a logical starting point? Like that happened, and then I thought of this, and then that led me here. The downloads just drop in. Like there was nothing that caused it, right? You're walking through your day and you think of someone. Like that's intuition. That's either they're thinking about you, or it's you should reach out to them, or they're connected to whatever you were just wondering about. Like that's not a coincidence, you know? So there's that audio piece, which is, hey, all these thoughts in my head aren't mine, right? And then there's also what I said about the feeling piece. Like, do I notice I get different kind of physical, do I get chills in my body? Do I feel other people's emotions? Am I an empath is what people say, right? Am I feeling other people? Do I notice I'm really affected by the energy in the room? I'm like, I gotta get out of here. Like, this is really low vibe, or I'm feeling that person's sadness, or do I feel it in my body as if it's my own when somebody's going through something? And then there's the claircognizance, the knowing of like, I just know. Like, I just knew what you were gonna say. I just knew to make that move. And the thing is, for most entrepreneurs, every entrepreneur, like I work with primarily, like personally, entrepreneurs, CEOs. I work with a lot of CEOs, and there's not a single CEO I know who's not like super psychic. Most of them are incredibly clairvoyant. Like they visualize, they can see the system in their mind. They can see the business. They can see the process. If not, they're extremely claircognizant. Like they just know what to do. We call it instinct. Like I just knew. And to me, that's intuition.
Well, like, so you're saying like your gut, like going with your gut.
That's your gut. That's intuition, okay. Right? And you can start to refine that. You can start to play with that and start to ask questions instead of just using it when it comes in, you know?
So how do you do that? Because I get that a lot, right? So like when people ask me, they're like, why did you do real estate? I have my little kind of like origin story.
Yeah.
But the honest to God answer is I just had this like.
You just knew.
I just had a knowingness since I was a kid to do that.
I think you have a lot of knowing. Like you always, like you just know.
So, but okay, so I'm curious, like for me, like because I've experienced following that and then great things happen.
Yeah.
But I feel like it comes up out of nowhere. So how do I, Christina the Channel, like develop that so I can utilize that more? So instead of just waiting for, you know, the tide and the wind to go and so I can sail, how do I get like a motor on my boat? You know what I mean? So I can go where I want. Or like be more direct, be more purposeful with where I want to go.
Ask questions. Like you start to ask questions, or you can even use a friend to be like, here are my questions. And you're like, okay, I'm going to set my ego aside. I'm going to set my thoughts aside. Set that intention, right? Get into like a relaxed state. I'm setting this aside, deciding that. Like, all right, soul self, please communicate with me. And either you can ask the question or have a friend ask the question. They ask it and you don't think about it. You just say it. So you have to like practice, because that's the thing. Most people, they just don't trust their intuition. Like they think. Something comes in and then they think about it, right? And so if you made a list of questions for yourself about your life or what you're wondering, or random stuff just for practice purposes, and you set that into, you just get into that relaxed state, take some breaths, right? Say, ego thoughts, please step aside. Mind thoughts, please step aside. Soul self, please communicate with me now. And then ask the question, and immediately what comes through, that's it. Just say it.
Yeah.
And you just start to practice that, and you can use that technique with no matter how your gifts come in. If you're more visual, or you hear it, or you feel something in your body, like you just start to practice with questions. And that's how you move through life. Here's the thing. Our brains are powerful processors, right? And our egos are working off of conditioning and things we've experienced before. There's this whole other realm of information that is your soul self, that is that higher knowledge, that is the vibrational template, that's alignment. Like, you're vibrationally coded with alignment, like your highest timeline. That is what we're meant to be living always. And so our intuition is always giving us the cheat sheet. And our mind is always looking for the how. In what way? What are the steps? Our mind is limited in how it can perceive it, because when it comes to living your highest timeline, so much of that is synchronicity. And your mind can't plan for synchronicity, right? Your mind can't plan for miracles. And your intuition is saying, go to that store, go to that event, reach out to Michael, like out of nowhere, because that's aligning you with the synchronicity. Yeah. And if you followed your mind, like, that doesn't make sense, or no, I don't want to bother them, right? You just missed the potential timeline.
What you're saying makes so much sense. And I love, like, one of the things I really love about you is you so have this ability to take these spiritual concepts, but then marry them with logic and explain them and articulate them in ways that are logical and make sense.
Thank you.
Because while you're talking about this, I'm thinking about the first experience I had with manifestation. And the guy who taught me this stuff and these exercises and practices of writing and all this, and mindset and meditation and all the things that go with it. One of his like phrases is "fuck how."
Yeah.
Because he's like, your mind's be like, how are you gonna do that? How are you gonna do that? You ain't never did that. How are you gonna do that? And it's like, fuck the how. Like, declare what you want, do these certain things, and then the how will eventually show up.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you sit on your ass on the couch and just be like, well, I'm manifesting.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you put the energy, but when you're talking about questions too, it's like I was pondering, like, what is a question at its like deepest core? And the thought I had, and I'm really curious to go into this with you, is holding an energy or a frequency, right? Because we assign words. Like, the question is like, what does this mean, right? But like, what that really is some kind of frequency in our body that's almost like a magnet looking for something, and then when it finds it, it's like, and then once it's satisfied, the magnets stick together. Then it's like, that's the answer in the question. Now it's like, this loop is complete. Yeah. So it's like, by putting out this thing to like manifest, they're almost kind of like questions, like, and it's holding that charge of like, hey, until these things happen, this is incomplete. So I'm going to hold this charge, ask these questions until like the magnets meet. Yeah. And like, I think it's so interesting too, like, just like how magnets, there's like a force that we can't see and they go. Like, my experience with manifestation has been like, everything in my logic is like, this is not going to happen. And all of it happened, like, freakishly. And I wouldn't have been able to explain all the players and pieces that came together. And it felt so much better than trying to make this like really detailed and elaborate plan. Yeah.
But you can't explain it because you're trying to see it from the orientation point of your 3D logical mind. And that's what I'm saying of when you set your intention, when you're manifesting, you have just locked into in a higher dimension. Like, we're talking quantum physics, right? Like, in the non-physical realm, you've just latched onto a timeline where that occurs. And that vibrational blueprint is anchored into your physical body. And your intuition, because your soul is the communicator, is saying this is how you go onto that blueprint. So people are thinking, it doesn't make sense. But like, if you can see it from the higher dimension, which not everybody will, but I'm telling you, like, it's a blueprint. And so from my mind, I'm like, of course it makes sense. Like, you're just not seeing because you're trying to see it with the lens of the glasses of my logical mind, instead of understanding your intuition is your GPS every step of the way, taking you along the route. From a higher dimension, the route is right there. It's not some chance thing, right? And to your point, the thing is, when you ask a question and you don't feel satisfied, it's because you haven't gotten the real answer. And there's so many people that keep coming back to the same question. Should I be in this relationship? Should I be in this job? Should I go in this direction? It's like,
if you have to ask yourself that question more than once, it's no.
Exactly, right? Yeah. It's like, of course it's off. And your intuition is like, hey, keep asking that because you haven't quite received what it is. So that magnet example is perfect. So, it's a different way of viewing the world. And I think for me, it's more logical than the other way.
So one of the other things you do is is it ahai?
Ahai.
Ahai. So
Yeah.
a high energy healing,
Mm-hmm.
what is that? What differentiates a high from other energy healing, and like what could someone hope to get from doing that?
I mean, there's lots of different energy healing modalities. So it's a modality that I downloaded, essentially. It's a hands-on form of healing. It can also be sent via distance. So I is a specific vibration that is working through the practitioner, like anchoring into that vibration that's moving through our bodies out of our hands and being sent to the person. And that balances and regulates the energy body, essentially. So when I'm talking about, like, how do I work with the energy body? Cutting cords, like noticing blockages, removing that, balancing everything. It's that frequency. It's all frequency work, So I don't know if people, like, there's ELT, which is like lymphatic drainage with these, they look like kind of like lightsaber wands. And so, the person holds that wand over the body, and it's the frequency that gets into the body and breaks up any like scar tissue or lymph, right? It's like the same idea, right? The energy is getting to the energy body and moving it around, and that's how we do the energy healing or the energy work. So again, that can be distance or virtual. It supports the body's own like healing processes, right? Because it's just putting yourself back into energetic alignment. Everything has an energetic root. So people have experienced physical symptoms resolve. People have experienced, emotional things resolve. You can get answers. It's just creating clarity and balance and alignment in the system. So does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it does. It sounds like beautiful work.
Well, you've gotten it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm glad.
But I mean, like, not everyone's got it.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it, and I found it pretty trippy that things I was thinking of, you were like, I'm kind of like seeing like this and that, and I was like, that's weird because I was thinking about those things.
Yeah,
it's trippy. But so in kind of conclusion, like, what can you leave people with, like, because it's all about like the idea starting to do this, and it's like, I love talking to you, and it was such an honor to be on your podcast and see what a good podcaster looks like, a good host.
Thanks.
It's really difficult. And so if you're listening or watching, like, I'm new, right?
You're doing great.
Cut me some slack.
This has been great. I love this.
Thank you. But remember, honesty is love, so don't fucking lie to me.
I
No, I'm kidding.
I would not lie to you.
That makes me feel good, actually, coming from you. But, like, getting real, right, or, like, being authentic allows people to, like, be on that path, meet their tribe, and unlock, like, their superpower or develop their skill, their gift, right? Which ultimately typically brings more fulfillment in life, and a lot of times more success in business. That's my experience. It sounds like your experience and a lot of my guests' experiences. What would you leave listeners with? Like, what actionable items can they do, or how would you conclude that? Like, how would you set people on the path, or encourage people who are on the path, or people who are so in fear and like are like, but I've got this job and I can't be myself, or I don't want my family to know, or I feel like I have these gifts, but like, so I'm afraid. Like, what advice do you want to leave people with?
To be true to my personality, I'm not really interested in motivating people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because you have to have that within yourself. And what I would say is, I have learned that life is just a series of choices, and we are creating our lives with every single choice that we make. And I don't want an ordinary life. I want an extraordinary life. And to create an extraordinary life, I have to make extraordinary decisions. And what I have learned to be true is that every time I trust my intuition, I trust my gut, however you want to view it, the most incredible, magical things happen, like, out of this world. And people always ask me with every part of my life, how did you do that? How did you do that? Like, I make brave decisions all the time. And people, we can get stuck in, I'm afraid to do this, I'm afraid to do that. But you know what else I'm afraid of? I'm afraid of being unhappy, being stagnant, having regret, not making the most of my life. And so, choose your hard is really it.
I like that.
Right? Choose your hard or choose your easy. And I wish that people, I wish more people could understand how fucking magical life can be, right? Like, I feel like I open this up and I'm like, life is like Harry Potter, you know, and it's a lot of fun. I have so much fun in my life, and we are creators. Like, on this planet, we are creators through energy, through intention, through choices. We get to create whatever we want. And I think a lot of people are living feeling like they can't create what they want. Life is just happening to them. It's not just that life is happening for you. It's that you are creating your life. And so it's up to you if you want to make the choices to create what you want. So it comes back to, what do you want, and are you prioritizing that, you know? So I think the piece of advice I would give people is that life is too short to not trust yourself, and life is too short to not follow what's going to make you happy. And at the end of the day, to be happy in your life, you need to prioritize your happiness.
Beautifully said. Well, Christina, thank you so much for coming on. How can the people reach you, or what do you have to plug, baby? Give it to them.
Yeah, I mean, they can reach me anywhere at Christina the Channel, as you know, on Instagram, YouTube. My website is ChristinaTheChannel.com. Podcast is Multidimensional with Christina the Channel, and yeah, connect. I'm pretty much all over the place. I'm easy to find.
Well, thanks for being here. I love it. You're always very grounded, yet in the clouds.
Grounded yet in the clouds. I love that.
I love it. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you so
and
much.
Thank you all for listening. Wow, that blew me away. And I hope for any of you that are listening or watching that you got as much out of that as I did. It is always, for me, when I sit with Christina, I always admire just how passionate she is, how loving she is, how direct and just like straightforward, but also how connected she is spiritually. And it's hard sometimes for me to wrap my head around, but there's always a knowingness like that I feel that she's so genuine and she's got so much wisdom. And it's just really awesome for me to be able to talk with her, and hopefully you got something about her shares about her gifts. And I really love, one of my takeaways was at the end, she says, you know, like in life, like choose your hard or choose your easy. And I just really love that, because it's like we all have choices to make. So if you want an extraordinary life, you need to make extraordinary choices. I'm going to redo that real quick. Okay, ready? Go. Wow, I hope you guys got as much out of that as I did. Christina is amazing. I always love sitting down with her, and I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I love that, like some of the key takeaways I got. I love when she said, choose your easy or choose your hard. We're all making choices, and the choices we make really are going to dictate where our lives go, right? So if you want an extraordinary life, you need to make extraordinary choices. And it seems simple, but yet so profound. So if you want to reach out to Christina, reach out to her. I've done her energy work. I've done some of her coaching. She is incredible. And if you have any questions for me, reach out to me. I hope you guys liked it, and we'll catch you next time.